So you've probably seen Icarus being streamed a bunch and talked about a lot online. Perhaps you're even here after looking at the Steam store page for it. Well, I'm making this video to explain exactly what Icarus is. It's a bit of a weird one, as while it is a survival game, it's not quite what you'd expect of most survival games in the genre. Before getting stuck in, remember to subscribe, like, dislike, or comment and ask questions below if you have anything further to ask or if you have any feedback for me. But to put it simply, Icarus is a survival game where you play as what's referred to as a prospector, a simple human tasked with being dropped onto a planet that humans have tried and failed to terraform to be like Earth, on a planet 30 trillion miles away from Earth. You and your friends will be dropped in separate pods onto the planet and tasked with finding and retrieving exotics, which are rare materials. The catch being that you actually have to survive and bring them back before the mission timer ends, which can be set by you, the player. And these are in real-time days. You might wonder upon first looking at this game, why the spacesuits and yet no tools if they have space travel? Well, the company that hires these random prospectors doesn't give them tools as they spent most of their money on just terraforming alone, which failed. Though you could also argue that due to the very low survival rate that they just don't want to waste money on someone who's probably going to die anyway. Sounds like a nice company to work for, right? The exotic materials also supposedly messed with the terraforming, as it was mentioned in the No Rescue trailer, which I really suggest you watch. It's actually pretty interesting. It pretty cryptically just says that it changed the enzymes in some way, which is probably why the air is toxic to people, but not to the animals which have adapted to the terraformed planet. Not only this, but the planet is now host to hostile weather events on a regular basis, ranging from high winds and heavy rain to thunderstorms, blizzards, and scorching heat depending on where you are on the planet. So you must adapt based on where you want to look for those materials. Once you retrieve these exotic materials, you return back to the pod and back to the orbiting station, where you can sell your exotics and exchange them for various things. These are not in game yet, so can't really say what that will net you so far. But with the game's background and a touch of lore out of the way, I think it's time for gameplay, yeah? So as I said, you start in a drop pod, you land, you have literally nothing. You must gather quickly before you come across any predators on the planet, and make basic tools to make a shelter before you have any weather events stir up. If you do fail to make a shelter, however, you can hide in the drop pod. The game has three main survival mechanics, minus health and stamina, which are obvious: oxygen, food, and water. Oxygen requires you to find oxite. At the start, you put that in your oxygen slot, and the suit will slowly make that into oxygen, but it's very inefficient. Later in the game, you will make something called an air bladder and unlock a machine called the oxide dissolver, where it will do this much more efficiently, and you can use it about 4 times with your oxygen empty before needing a refill. Food? Very obvious. You need to eat. But you can have up to 3 food effects at once, meaning you should always try find a mix of foods to eat, as they can buff your health and stamina massively, which when trying to escape a bear early on, will save your life. Some foods also have bonus effects, like the flatbread. It gives you 10% bonus XP gain. Water. Do I even really need to explain this one? Hydrate before you dehydrate. If you can manage these 3 basic things, you'll be halfway to not becoming bear food. Once you play a little, you will level up, either by gathering and crafting, or killing animals, which will net you 1 talent point and 3 blueprint points. Talent points can be used for a range of things, but to put simply, you can get perks such as having more stamina, running faster, gathering more wood per tree, or being able to put out fires faster. Blueprint points are for learning how to make things, anything from basic tools to hunting rifles, all the way up to armor and radars. You can play solo and try to survive and learn it all yourself, or you can play with friends, which in my opinion is much easier because you can spread out the points and have a much more focused approach as to what your role in the group is, if you really want to min-max the game. Plus, there is shared XP, where every time someone in the group does something or crafts something, everyone in the group gets a small amount of XP from that as well. Depending on where you want to live, as there are forest, snow, and desert biomes currently in the game, the armors in the game are useful depending on where it is you want to go or where you want to live. You start with basically nothing. You can get cloth armor, leather armor, and fur armor. Cloth is basic. It gives a small buff to physical resistance as well as heat and cold and exposure. and in the early game, the 5% move speed is kinda nice. Leather, a lot more resistances and a tiny buff to health and stamina regeneration, but you do have less resistance to heat. Fur is better for surviving the cold and also has more resistance, but again, less resistance to the heat. But that should be obvious because you're wearing fur. To quickly talk about materials, wood and stone are fairly easy to understand and find. They are almost everywhere in the foresty area. Fibre is just any plants you can pick up. Sulfur and oxide and coal can be found around the mountains usually, or near caves, and caves are for finding useful materials such as iron, copper, titanium, aluminium, or aluminum depending on where you come from. These will be the materials you use to upgrade later on, as you will need them for many tools and workbenches to help prevent your death. Building is the last big thing I want to talk about in terms of gameplay, as with these weather events, normal survival game building does not apply here. You can build a base pretty simply, and the building tools work really well currently and they're easy to get used to. As mentioned, there are weather events that are dangerous to both you and your buildings. Wood and thatch will be damaged over time by strong winds or storms, so either you need to keep repairing them during weather events, or you try and hurry to a level where you can unlock stone or higher level building pieces. The weather events do have the potential to not just damage, but if the lightning gods will it, set your house ablaze. And there is fire propagation in this game, so the fires will spread if unchecked. I set my basic house on fire just so you can see what happens if you let it spread. Once you get to stone buildings, however, it is a lot easier to manage, but that is offset by the cost of the stone buildings. They are quite pricey, so it's a risk versus reward as to how much manpower you really want to spend. On top of that, you have to be 100% sure you want to live in that area first. No point in building a huge fort miles away from any exotic materials or useful metals. Once you've retrieved as many exotics as you dare to get, you then return to your original drop pod, which means you need to travel back to it, which could be a journey in itself if you've gone to a more exotic rich biome. Once you get back in your original drop pod, you are then finished with that mission. If you fail to reach the drop pod before the timer hits 0, your character is classed as lost and will die along with all the experience and upgrades that you had. That, in my opinion, is the basics of Icarus. You go from prospector with nothing, to pro hunter with basic tools, to kitted out adventurer with guns in a fortress. Either that or you die and are lost to the world. Icarus is a game suited more for people who enjoy harsh survival gameplay, tough environments, and in some situations even arguably unfair deaths or loss of buildings. A viewer told me they had a thunderstorm that set their base on fire, while at the same time had 2 bears attacking the walls. So whether they put out the fire currently spreading and let the bears break in, or they fight the bears and let that fire spread. It's kind of a lose-lose situation. Storms, as I mentioned before, are actually a threat. If you stay out in them too long, or it gets dark as you try and make your way back to your house, it's near impossible to see. This was my view trying to get back to my house mid-storm. I genuinely fell into a river and nearly fell down a waterfall. It was that impossible to see, I couldn't even tell where the ground was. It's a real learning curve and a harsh survival experience as you try and scrape up the resources to even have a home at all. I've only played the second beta weekend, but I will definitely be going back for more. I clocked about 22 hours in the weekend and streamed it a lot. Even found a few funny bugs. But that's the nature of beta. Honestly, one of the best things about Icarus though, in my opinion, is the fact that it actually has a lore, and they seem to know what they want to get from that already, compared to Rust or Ark etc, where they all kind of hint at a lore, or at least Ark did, and then just kind of didn't bother. It kind of ends up where, why are those survival games? Well, just because. Why is Icarus a survival game? Well, they already told us before it's even released. I hope they build on the lore as well as the gameplay and mechanics, because honestly, it has a lot of potential, and because it's PvE only, they could basically do whatever they want. Judging by the little clip in the intro video, there are aliens or alien species in the works, as this is a still from the game's intro, and this is definitely not an Earth species. But I hope this explains to you what Icarus is and who it might suit, and it helps you make up your mind if you're on the fence about buying it or just understanding it. If you want to follow me on Twitch, Twitter, or Discord, I will, as always, put my links in the pinned comment and the description, and I will see you for the next video.